Excellences, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, veuillez s'il vous plaît vous lever pour l'arrivée du Très Honorable Stephen Harper, Premier ministre du Canada, l'Honorable Shelley Glover, ministre du Patrimoine canadien et des langues officielles, Son Altesse l'Aga Khan et le Prince Amyn Aga Khan. Nous vous demandons de bien vouloir demeurer debout pour l'hymne national.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the opening ceremony of the Aga Khan Museum. A recitation from the Holy Quran will be followed by translations in English and in French.
Excellences, distingués invités, Mesdames et Messieurs, nous vous souhaitons la bienvenue à la cérémonie d'ouverture du musée Aga Khan. La récitation de versets du Saint-Coran sera suivie par leur traduction en anglais et en français.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس قد جاءكم برهان من ربكم وأنزلنا إليكم نورا مبينا فأما الذين آمنوا بالله واعتصموا به فسيدخلهم في رحمة منه وفضل ويهديهم إليه صراطا مستقيما صدق الله العلي العظيم
Au nom d'Allah, le tout miséricordieux, le très miséricordieux. Ô vous les hommes, une preuve décisive vous est déjà parvenue de la part de votre Seigneur. Nous avons fait descendre sur vous une lumière éclatante. Allah introduira bientôt dans sa miséricorde et sa grâce ceux qui auront cru en lui et qui se seront placés sous sa protection. Il les dirigera vers lui dans un chemin droit. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. O humankind, indeed, a proof has come to you from your Lord, and we have sent down to you a manifest light. So, as for those who believe in Allah and hold fast to Him, He shall make them enter into His mercy and a bounty from Him. He shall guide them to Himself a straight path.
Once again, we would like to welcome Henry Kim, the Director and CEO of the Aga Khan Museum, to introduce our next speakers.
It is my great pleasure to request Prince Amyn Aga Khan, the Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Aga Khan Museum, to deliver his address.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Prime Minister Harper, Your Highness, my brother, Madame Clarkson, Excellencies, Ms. Shelley Glover, Minister of Canadian Heritage and Official Languages, Honourable Ministers, Chancellor de Broglie, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends. What a pleasure it is to welcome you to this exceptional place on this most special day. Exceptional because we are inaugurating today not one, but two new and unique buildings, facing each other across a new and unique park, two utterly unusual pieces of architecture, housing surprising reflections of beauty. This is also a special moment because of the special role that we expect the Aga Khan Museum to play as a gateway into the history and artistic traditions of the Muslim world, nearly a fifth of humanity, and for those non-Muslims and even Muslims who wish better to understand that world. The Aga Khan Museum will play this role at a time when such a gateway is profoundly needed. All across the planet, political and economic developments, the forces of globalization are connecting Muslim and non-Muslim societies ever more intimately, and yet, at the same time, misunderstandings between those worlds are becoming an increasingly dangerous threat. Expanded and improved means of communication can as easily be used to cause divisions and fragmentation as they can to unify and breed understanding. Despite the advances we have witnessed through improved technology and through globalization, a knowledge gap continues to exist and perhaps even grow. And the result of that gap is a vacuum within which myths and stereotypes can so easily fester, fed by the amplification of extreme minority voices. Symbols become confused with emblems. Imagery of demagoguery or despotism, of intolerance and conflict, come to dominate in such an environment with global repercussions. That context is precisely the reason that the potential contribution of an institution such as the Aga Khan Museum can be so important. I believe strongly that art and culture can have a profound impact in healing misunderstanding and in fostering trust, even across great divides. This is the extraordinary purpose, the special mandate to which this museum is dedicated. In its role to reveal and to stimulate dialogue between different cultures, the Aga Khan Museum will continue a long history of cultural sharing between Islam and the West. Historians tell us that as early as the 9th century, trade and commerce were bringing objects of art from the Muslim to the European world, from the far reaches of the Iranian region, for example, all the way to the Carolingian courts of northern Europe. A century later, rock crystal ewers and other Islamic art from North Africa, then part of the Fatimid Caliphate, appeared in the collections of European courts and can be traced in the ledgers of the treasuries of European churches. By the time you get to the Cabinet Curiosité of the 16th century in Europe, often partially open to the public, and perhaps the precursors of a modern museum, numerous works of art from the Muslim world are to be found. Of course, at that time, and indeed for centuries afterward, the acquisition of cultural treasures in the West happened mostly in private settings, in aristocratic homes and places. Only later, as the idea of the museum as a public institution began to take hold, especially after the opening of the British Museum in London in the mid-18th century and the Louvre in Paris, art from the Muslim world began to find a wider European audience. Colonialism inevitably increased that audience. In the Muslim world, collecting and public displays of rare and beautiful objects were common. The notion of waqf itself, of property given for the public good and for religious purposes, engendered a widespread movement to collect. Public displays of artifacts were a feature of the Fatimid period, and precious objects from the treasure were publicly paraded through the streets of Cairo. In Central Asia, in the Middle Periods, many Muslim rulers collected and displayed to visitors their finest objects. From as early as 1607, for instance, in Safavid Iran, Shah Abbas the Great organized public displays of his collection and made a waqf donation to his ancestral shrine of his gold, silver, and jade vessels, his Chinese porcelain, his Persian manuscripts and textiles, thus making them available to be seen by visitors to that shrine. Like in the West, the largest collections were usually the possessions of kings, caliphs, and religious institutions. The oldest museum in Asia, I am told, was established in the late 18th century by the Asiatic Society in Bengal, and of course Khedive Ismail conceived the Cairo Museum in the late 19th century. What should be noted is that there is a long history from the earliest courts across the Ummah, such as the Abbasids in Baghdad in the 8th century, or the Fatimids in Egypt, of seeking out and bringing together the best artists, scientists, and scholars, the best creators of the time, irrespective of their religious, ethnic, or political backgrounds. The pursuit of cultural excellence in Western, as also Far Eastern art and learning, became important elements in Muslim life, within an ethic of tolerance and collaboration. A manifestation of this approach was, of course, Al-Andalus and the Iberian Peninsula, where Muslim leaders welcomed Christian and Jewish participants in a rich cultural life, pluralistic, so to speak. The same approach characterized the Mughal courts of Hindustan, the Uzbeks of Bukhara, Ottoman Turkey. One should not forget, too, that creating and maintaining libraries has always been part of the lifestyles of the wealthier men and women in Muslim countries. And those libraries, as often as not, contained illustrations or miniatures in their manuscripts. I cannot help wondering whether libraries and museums not overlap in function, and whether the former do not inevitably lead to the latter. I think it is accurate to say that in Muslim societies, the pursuit of artistic and cultural excellence has, for many centuries, been a hallmark of the life in those societies, just as for them, the aesthetic experience has always been seen as part of the learning process. The Aga Khan Museum in Toronto, that we're opening today, will differ slightly from the many famous institutions that currently have impressive collections of Islamic art in the Western world. For this museum will be one of the very few institutions in the Western Hemisphere that will be entirely devoted to the acquisition, preservation, study, and display of the arts of Muslim civilizations. The great majority of the best-known Western institutions have collections of Islamic art that are a smaller part of their larger international collections. Here, in Toronto, visitors from all over the world will be uniquely able to experience and appreciate the intellectual, cultural, and artistic heritage of Muslim civilizations in all of its rich diversity. Simply by emphasizing that diversity, the museum will make an important point that is so often now misunderstood by both the Muslim and non-Muslim worlds. The 1,000 and more treasures gathered here come from Spain, the Maghreb, the Arab Near East, from the Iranian world that stretched through Afghanistan and Central Asia, from from the courts of Hindustan, now India and Pakistan, and the Muslim communities of China. As I reflect on this diversity, the word connection comes to mind, for it will be the special opportunity of this museum to connect a broad array of Muslim cultures with one another, while also connecting visitors from other cultures to the riches of the Muslim past. Cultural connection will be at the heart of the museum's mission, to increase and illuminate the dialogue between different Muslim civilizations themselves and between those civilizations and non-Muslim civilizations. It is my hope that this museum will execute its mandate in a variety of ways which will go beyond what happens on casual cursory visits, although we know that even visits in a place like this can become moments of powerful inspiration. Learning can happen consciously or unconsciously, understanding can be instinctive or reasoned. The work of the museum will follow in the best tradition of the venerable Islamic cultural centers that I have mentioned earlier, where great libraries and other collections became prodigious centers for a continuing process of intellectual and artistic inquiry, a process of exploration and edification, of dialogue and discovery. It is my hope and expectation that this museum will play an active and effective educational role, helping visitors to appreciate, understand, and empathize with an aesthetic and a culture new but no longer foreign or alien to them. Furthermore, the museum should endeavor to institute creative outreach activities into the schools and other educational institutions in this area. Personally, I do not subscribe to the current theory, possibly chic, that study of our cultural past by young artists limits or even thwarts their creativity and spontaneity. We are what we come from, and to think that we come from nowhere is both an intellectual and a natural fallacy. Having said that, the Aga Khan Museum will regularly organize temporary exhibitions of contemporary artists too, as it should also reflect the evolution of the creative arts in the Muslim world. In pursuing these objectives, the museum will focus its attention not only on the acquisition, preservation, and display of visual arts, artistic creations, but also on a wide range of other cultural expressions, including poetry, philosophy, and literature, music, architecture, science, and social organization. This is a museum of Islamic arts, with a broad definition of all that the arts include, and presenting these arts as best we can within their full cultural context. Miniatures were not painted to be hung on white walls in rooms devoid of furniture or furnishings. C'est vraiment souligner l'évident. Metalware was, for the most part, designed to be picked up, used, or laid on furniture, in the sense that the arts reflect the senses, all of them, that usually one hears while one sees. Just as instinct leads us to want to touch what we want to see most clearly, the interplay between the arts is as essential to me as the interrelationship of the senses. The challenge, of course, will be how best to reveal the dialogue between the different arts themselves. On the website for the museum, which I urge you to visit, our distinguished director, Henry Kim, gives us a picture of what we can anticipate. Visitors to the museum, he says, are likely to view our permanent collection as they are to visit one of our many temporary exhibitions, to listen to a performance in the auditorium, attend a class, study architecture, tour gardens, or sample food from the great cuisines of Turkey, Iran, North Africa, Central Asia, and the Indian subcontinent. As you can see, Henry plans to showcase all the senses, or all the arts in this institution, even if his personal emphasis would seem to lie in the kitchen on taste. An asset for the museum and the fulfillment of its many-faceted mandate will be its close association with other institutions of the Aga Khan Development Network, many of which are represented here today. Among them are the Aga Khan Trust for Culture, the Historic Cities Program, the Aga Khan University, the Institute for the Study of Muslim Civilizations, the University of Central Asia, the Institute of Ismaili Studies, and the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. I'm sure that many of you will recall, just a little over 4 years ago, when we came to this site to mark this project's transition from the planning stage to the building stage, for investigation to construction. And today, we celebrate again as we move from construction to realization, with an enormous sense of gratitude to all those who made this day possible. Despite the difficulty of realizing a project as complex as this, the years of imagination, anticipation, and effort have finally been rewarded by the joy of realization, and we can now, at last, enter a period of active participation in the great work that this building will make possible. Je me souviens avec joie et satisfaction d'une discussion tenue en 2000 avec un groupe de jeunes Ismaili d'environ 25 ans d'âge sur ce qu'eux considéraient les priorités que nous devrions observer dans les années à venir. Et ces jeunes gens ont placé à l'époque un musée, une facilité culturelle, une bibliothèque et une cour, allez savoir pour une cour, et une cour haut sur la liste de priorités. Maintenant, ces jeunes hommes et femmes, 10 ans plus vieux et sans doute très nerveux à l'approche de la vieillesse, sont, j'espère, heureux et fiers de ce que nous avons accompli. There are so many people that I should like to thank today that it is difficult to know where to begin, and I worry about forgetting somebody. I should like to give particular thanks to Princess Catherine Aga Khan, the widow of my late uncle Prince Sadruddin. Not only has the collection that she and my uncle formed over the years constituted the nucleus of the museum's collection today, but she has allowed us to repeat within the museum an entire room from their house in Geneva, which we call the Bellerive Room, and which is a space I personally find as poetic as it is illuminating. I must also thank my brother, mon brother, and all those who have lent or given works of art to enlarge and expand our collections. And of course, thanks go to our architects, Fumiko Maki and Gary Kamamoto, Moriyama and Teshima, to Adrien Gardère and his team, our designers, to our contractors and subcontractors, the Amara team who provided project management, and to the many generous friends who donated their time and already their resources to ensure that this project took shape. Professor Maki's inspiring building that we're opening today faces the new Ismaili Center, designed by Charles Correa, across the Aga Khan Park, designed by Vladimir Yurovich. As a whole, this entire site speaks to the unity in Islamic thought, the profound unity of three great dimensions of human life: the cultural, the spiritual, and the natural. There must also be symbolic value in the fact that the three architects who took the lead in designing these spaces come from Japanese, Indian, and Lebanese backgrounds, brought together here in the spirit of international partnership, which is also such a proud part of Canadian culture. Let me conclude by saying that if I were looking for a single word to sum up my intention and hope for the Aga Khan Museum, it would be the word enlightenment. It is a word which has both cultural and spiritual significance. The history of the thought and the creations of man can perhaps be said to be a long path from one period of enlightenment to another. I would hope that this museum will contribute to a new period of enlightenment, helping visitors from around the world to rediscover the common symbols that unite us all across the globe, across all civilizations, across time. And so, it is in the spirit of immense gratitude that we open this museum, respectful of the rich traditions that it represents and hopeful about the role it can play in the great continuing work of cultural connection. Thank you.
Please welcome the Honourable Shelley Glover, Minister of Canadian Heritage and Official Languages, to deliver her address.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Harper, Your Highness, and of course your family, parliamentarians, friends. I am so pleased to be here. I have a special message for Prince Amyn. It is truly an honor to share this stage with you, sir. But I am told that you have a special day today. Happy birthday. C'est tout un honneur pour moi d'être ici à Toronto aujourd'hui pour l'ouverture du musée Aga Khan. C'est un honneur de partager cette scène avec des dirigeants distingués, généreux et admirables. En tant que ministre du Patrimoine canadien et des langues officielles, j'ai la chance d'observer de façon directe les contributions importantes des musées à nos communautés. At their very best, museums help us see the world differently. educating us, enlightening us, and challenging our views and opinions. Museums, in fact, showcase our stories. They tell Canadians, as well as visitors to Canada, about where we come from and about the values that shaped us as a society. For Canada, through the generations, those values have included pluralism, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Our government believes that the shared values of all Canadians have long been crucial to ensuring Canada speaks with one strong voice on the world stage. The institution that we are celebrating today will no doubt be influential in promoting those values. The Aga Khan Museum will be the first of its kind in North America dedicated to presenting the arts of Islam in all their historic and geographic diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, today marks the beginning of yet another chapter in the ambitious efforts of His Highness, the Aga Khan, and the Ismaili community in Canada. The Aga Khan Museum will deliver to Canadians and visitors alike some of the world's most breathtaking Islamic art. In its educational focus, the museum will reach out to speak to Muslims and non-Muslims alike about the peace, creativity, beauty, and pluralism of Muslim history. And in these tumultuous times, those values are needed more than ever. And I'm extremely proud to serve a government and a prime minister who also stands up for those values and for what is right. Just as Canada and our prime minister stand tall in the world to defend these values, so too will the Aga Khan Museum act as a strong force for them in Canada and around the globe. Le Canada a toujours été une terre d'accueil pour les personnes de différentes origines qui veulent vivre ici et bâtir un meilleur avenir pour eux-mêmes et leurs familles. Notre force réside dans notre pluralisme et notre diversité que nous sommes fiers de présenter au monde. Et c'est pour ces raisons qu'il est parfait que le musée Aga Khan soit construit ici. For our government, there has been no partner more dedicated in taking Canadian values globally than His Highness the Aga Khan. And that's why in 2006, our government was proud to contribute to the endowment fund for the Global Centre for Pluralism in Ottawa. That $30 million, which was matched by the Aga Khan, has helped to refurbish the former Canadian War Museum to serve as the centre's headquarters. And in February, Prime Minister Harper and His Highness together announced a $100 million joint venture between Canada and the Aga Khan Development Network for development aid in Africa and in Asia. In these and so many other ways, His Highness the Aga Khan has consistently helped create platforms for Canada's unique strengths to be shared internationally. And for this reason, our government has taken the exceptionally rare step of honoring His Highness as an honorary Canadian citizen. Allow me to share a little secret with you. Most of you may be seeing the museum today for the very first time, but I was fortunate enough to get a sneak peek last month with my colleague, Member of Parliament John Carmichael. And while I was struck by the architecture and the wide open spaces in this beautiful new building, the grounds are absolutely magnificent. And I recalled that His Highness is a former hockey player. So I found myself secretly thinking, if one of those outdoor spaces became available, how Canadian would that be to have an ice rink where we could all play? And Prime Minister, you could write about it afterwards. But in all seriousness, the warm welcome that I received here has stayed with me for weeks, and thinking back on it always brings a smile to my face. And I want to thank for just a moment those who led that tour, Dr. Kim, Mr. Talib, and Mr. Danani. Thank you so much for your warm welcome on that very special occasion. I know others will feel the same spirit and warmth as the doors are open to the public at the museum very shortly. I also smile as I remember how earlier this year our Prime Minister invited His Highness to address our Parliament. It was truly a historic moment. Hearing his words of wisdom that day will forever be a cherished memory for me. And I'm sure they will be a source of inspiration for all those who had the unique opportunity to be present in the House of Commons on that day. And as our Prime Minister introduced His Highness that day, he said the following, and I quote, "Canadians are strongest when we have the support of those who share our values." And I agree wholeheartedly. As Minister for Canadian Heritage, I see firsthand how our shared values can not only transcend ethnicities and languages, but can bind communities. What all of us here today share is that love of freedom and democracy, our desire for peace, and the will to support pluralism as the foundation of a strong Canada. En conclusion, je tiens à exprimer nos sincères remerciements à Son Altesse pour avoir amené ces institutions ici dans cette ville et dans notre pays. Merci d'avoir choisi le Canada pour investir des ressources financières et institutionnelles importantes, pour avoir créé des emplois et de l'activité économique, et surtout de nous rappeler que le Canada est un chef de file mondial grâce à nos valeurs. Nous savons que le Canada est et peut rester un symbole de force durant une époque troublante. I conclude today by saying that the Aga Khan Museum will be yet another symbol of the values and ideals that Canada, and indeed Your Highness and your community, represent to the world. Thank you once again, and on behalf of all Canadians, on behalf of the Government of Canada, and on behalf of our Prime Minister, congratulations, and we wish you the best of success. Merci bien.
I now invite the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister of Canada, and His Highness the Aga Khan to unveil the plaque to commemorate the opening of the Aga Khan Museum. The opening ceremony of the Aga Khan Museum has now come to a close. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the departure of the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, the Honourable Shelley Glover, His Highness the Aga Khan, and Prince Amyn Aga Khan.